a quasi-judicial body authorized by Section 24-421 of the City of Ferndale's Code of Ordinances. The BZA is a body of limited powers. We are restricted by the City of Ferndale zoning ordinance and by Michigan law. The BZA is authorized to interpret the zoning ordinance and zoning map, hear and decide appeals made by administrative officials or bodies charged with enforcing the ordinance, and to analyze variance requests as permitted under the ordinance. The BZA does not have the power or the authority to amend the zoning ordinance or to disregard its provisions or to rezone parcels of land. Changes to the ordinance must originate with City Council, not the BZA. Can we have a roll call, please?
Azar?
Here.
Webb?
Here.
Colson?
Here.
Williamson?
Here.
Palmer?
Here.
And Councilmember Mikulski.
Here.
All right, we have a couple of absent board members tonight. Board Member Monk and Board Member Blazinski were not able to be with us. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to excuse these absent board members.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And next up, we have approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any proposed changes or additions to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Palmer.
Second.
Second by Colson. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Agenda is approved. And next on the agenda, we have approval of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review and consider the minutes from the June 20th, 2023 meeting? Does anyone have any proposed changes to those minutes? In that case, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the June 20th, 2023 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the 2023.
Have a motion?
Second.
Supported by Colson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. The minutes of the June 20th, 2023 meeting are approved. And next on the agenda, we have call to audience. If there are any audience members here today that would like to address the Board of Zoning Appeals about any item that is not on today's agenda, now's your opportunity to do so. Right, seeing none, we'll move on from the call to audience and move on to our regular agenda. The first agenda item we have up for today is a dimensional variance request at 2129 Romeo Street. The applicant proposes a 5.7-foot variance in the rear setback, which would reduce the rear setback from 35 feet to 29.3 feet. I understand the structure has already been built based on plans that were approved by the city. Those plans reflected a 35-foot setback with a 20.5-foot rear expansion to the building. The applicant states that the incursion into the rear setback did not become apparent until after a survey was completed in connection with splitting the lot and splitting the southern portion of the lot into a separate lot. Staff, do we have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to show this image. So this is kind of the northeast section of the city. We have Orchard. So just to the north here is Martin Road Park. This is Romeo, so the house is on the west side. This was a double lot until very recently. So the applicant had to shave off some of that bay window that you can actually see on the south side of the house. They did go forward with the expansion off the rear, and the lot has since been split. I don't really have anything else to add. I mean, staff is here to answer any questions. In particular, we do have Scott Worthington, our building official. Scott was the one who did review the plan and issue the permits, so we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Kyle. And at this time, I'd invite the applicant, if the applicant is here and would like to add anything. If you want to step up to the microphone and introduce yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
Thumbs up, is this okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, evening board. Eric Heider from Polyarch, 44055 Gratiot in Clinton Township. Last year in June, a plan was submitted for a rear addition to the house. by removing the side addition. A set of plans were reviewed by Scott in the building department. There was some discrepancies that we were encroaching on the rear yard setback. A new set of plans were redone with a site plan and then resubmitted to Scott. I emailed it to Scott to meet the rear yard setback. Those were approved, and supposedly the old set of plans were stamped and given to the builder, and that's what he built off of, not realizing that the old set was actually given to the builder to build and not the new set from the building department. So there was an honest mistake on that because at that time, it's kind of, past COVID, so we were submitting plans electronically and not kind of handheld. So at that point, we're asking for the rear yard setback that the addition was built according to the old plans and not the new plans. On an honest mistake was kind of given, and again, it was approved through all the inspections of the whole, the foundation, and the addition itself. So we're asking for the variance of the rear yard setback.
Thank you. So did I hear you say that you had to remove a side addition to the house?
Okay, the original house, if you can see on the very left of the plans, there was a side addition that protruded to the side yard setback. We removed that whole area, and we just did an addition that reflects the original width of the house by just going back.
Okay.
And then at that point, we just kind of renovated the whole house so it kind of has more of a modern craftsman look to it. So you can't really see the addition from the street because it does blend in with the same dimensions.
Okay, so initially there was going to be a side projection near the rear of the house, and in order to make sure you were fitting within the side setbacks,
Yes.
You revised that, removed that side projection.
That is correct.
And put it onto the rear with the understanding and belief that you were also in compliance with the rear setbacks?
Yes.
All right, since this matter was noticed up for a public hearing, I am going to open a public hearing as of 7:09 p.m. Any members of the public who would like to speak, who would like to ask any questions at this time, you're welcome to do so. Seeing none, we'll also close the public hearing at 7:09 p.m. And I will open this up to board members, ask any questions you might have of the applicant or of staff or of our building department official who's here with us today.
Through the chair. So the confusion came with old plans, new plans, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So the new plans were not put through and approved, the old plans were.
Yes, when I submitted the revised plans that met the setback, I emailed to Scott. He approved those plans, but somewhere there was a disconnect where the old plans were stamped, approved, and given to the builder, and that's what he built off of. So as the honest mistake. So there are emails that I did revise the plans according to the plan review that Scott gave me that needed to be addressed.
So at this point, when the construction was going on, you have certain phases of being cleared through the city, whether
Yes.
it's foundation or whatever else. So the foundation was not intruding on the back setback?
No, it was. It was because it was
Foundation was.
built from the old plans. So it was inspected from the old plans and approved
Didn't know
by.
how far, and I hate using this word because I always say it wrong, where it goes past the foundation. Is it
Cantilever? Yeah.
Thank you,
No, we did not cantilever.
Gotcha.
So
Is-
it's
okay.
it's flush.
That's what I wanted to
So
know.
the addition and the foundation is flush. So there's no projection, there's no nothing. So,
Just wanted to make sure.
yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Oops. All through the chair, what does the city have to say, please? Scott, since you approved the plans, could you please explain this? Or how we could actually consider a variance when you approved everything?
We did approve the plans to meet the 35-foot setback. They were submitted digitally. It sounds, it's been a long time, so I don't know exactly what happened, but the old plans were given back to the applicant, so they assumed that that was the approved set of prints, is kind of what I see.
Were they stamped?
I have to look at them, I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if they took stamped plans and built from there, or are the plans that were approved just stamped via
Yep.
online? I don't think you can do that. I think you need a physical copy, don't you?
Everything we get is digital now.
Oh, it is?
The plans are submitted, they're in our BSNA system. So if the inspector's out in the field, do they have any questions, they can look at the approved set of prints that we have scanned into the system.
Okay.
If the inspector was out there and saw the prints that they had on the job copy, they'd probably assume that that was the approved set, and that's probably how it was approved, I'm guessing. I'd have to ask the inspector, but that's what I'm guessing.
So it's my understanding that before you even make a foundation, it's formed, that's approved, and then the rest goes from there, and then that's approved. So
Correct.
when it was first formed, or laid out, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
it was approved, and no one checked the setback.
It was approved by our inspector, and they look to see, if it's on the side and you're supposed to be 5 feet and you look at it and it looks like it's 3 feet, they'll question that. If they look to the back and they don't know exactly where the rear property line is, it looks like it's 35 feet, they probably didn't question that. Any new house that's constructed, you have to have an as-built survey to verify all the setbacks
Okay.
before you get a CFO.
Right.
It's a little different with an addition because we're working with an existing foundation in a home that's currently there with a CFO. So it's a little different with that.
Wilson, did you have a question as well?
They have the copy of the original plans. If you don't mind bringing them up, I'd like to take a look at them. What is the process for,
Thanks.
okay, the applicant, what's the process for making sure that once there is approval for the site plans, that the contractor has the correct actual set of plans?
Well, I believe it's from the city gives usually a hard copy or a stamped copy to the builder to build. So.
So it goes right to the developer, or the contractor?
Yes.
Okay.
Where is that stamped?
Said that the stamp is digital at this point.
I know, but if you picked up plans.
That was
supposedly
given to me, it
approved-
just said stamp.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I want to see on here if it shows the,
The original plan does not, the new one does. So if you want to, look at
the original plans never showed a setback.
Setback was incorrect on the original plans, that's why they had to redo it.
But I want to see on here.
No, the original plan did not have on that copy, the original plot plan.
Not have a plot plan.
How was it initially determined that the original plans were not going to meet the setback requirements?
There's some field measurements done
Okay.
after the fact.
And that's what led to the
Yes.
revision?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's a couple fences back there, so there's a discrepancy on the exact lot line and the fence and the neighbor's fence, so.
I reviewed the plans, I contacted the architect to let them know that it wasn't in compliance with.
Thank you. Sorry to keep making you stand up, Scott, but
I guess
we got to capture it all if we
Yep.
can.
through the chair, when it is measured, you put something there, like a stick or anything to know where the 35 feet would be?
Out in the field? That's gonna be the inspector. Sometimes the surveyor will stake it, but with additions, typically, it's just field measured, out in the field.
I guess because you wanted it to be 35 feet.
Yeah.
And there was a discrepancy of fences, that once it was determined where 35 feet was, you didn't put X marks the spot, or, I'm just
Well, with the
thinking.
new revised set of prints, we have a site plan that shows it meets
Gotcha.
And you said there were several fences in the back?
At the time, way before, there's trees and a couple different fences, so we kind of took like a basic dimension from the original house, which we were removing at the time. So with the original set, we thought it was one dimension. Then when Scott said, I think there's a discrepancy here, so that's why we revised the site plan, saying, we got to move it back 2 feet. So during the planning phase, we shrank the addition and the plans. He approved it with 35 feet, but then on the old plans, that's where disconnect is somewhere.
I understand. Having lived in Ferndale for some time, I've lived in houses where there have been as many as like 5 fences back in between
Yeah.
the one house and then the lot on the other side. I know that happens.
And the house was abandoned, so there was a lot of overgrown trees and, with the fences, shrubs and so on, so there was, we thought it was one dimension and ended up being not.
Through the chair, for the revised plans, when you submitted the plans that got approved, how much of the back of the new addition did you have to remove?
I think we took 2 feet off. Yeah. Yeah, because my foundation shows 20 feet, so I believe I think the original was 22 or 23. Yeah.
But now it's 29 and a few inches, and it's gotta be 35, so that's 5.5 feet, let's just say. So where does that come into play? I'm confused.
Sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, to the applicant, there wasn't a clear understanding of exactly where that lot line was until the survey was done?
Correct. Until an engineered, civil engineer survey came out and did the lots to the south.
South.
Yeah.
When they did the engineering for the lot split is when this became an issue.
So from the revision from the original plan to the revised new plan, was it the understanding at the time that there only needed to be 2 feet taken off?
That is correct.
The structure, because everyone understood there was only a 2-foot incursion at that point?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Through the chair, the city, was the existing house already in the setback? Then where's the if 2 feet were taken off the addition, why is the variance request 5 feet 7 inches?
That was kind of what I was getting at a minute ago. They initially thought that there was only the 2-foot incursion because they knew exactly where that back lot line was, with the fences and the trees and so on back there.
Once it was
And they did the survey.
Okay.
Yes, that's when it became clear, I think.
Gotcha.
Through the chair, I shook my head, but for the record, I just wanted to answer your question. The existing house before the addition was not in the rear setback.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, on the first plan.
That's correct.
Okay.
Through the chair, one of the things on here states that the city approved the addition. And then, once it was built? Oh, okay. Just checking.
I believe there was multiple inspections done between the hole, the footing, spread footing itself, the walls, and kind of the rough inspections.
And the demo.
Demo also, so it's
That was long before they had the survey.
long before, yeah.
We're up to, we're at the point of ready to drywall. So the electrical, the plumbing, the roof is, everything is complete.
Are based on the building.
No, understood,
Yeah.
but the structure is based on setbacks.
Focusing on the building code, not realizing.
But that's because there was no survey. When I had my addition put on, I needed a survey. I got a mortgage survey. So I don't know why it's not a requirement anymore.
Was it your lender that
No.
required you get the survey?
No, it was the city. I had my plans approved, or looked at, and they said I needed a mortgage or a survey. So I hired somebody and they did a mortgage survey, the stake survey. But, yeah, I'm positive of that. No, that was 23 years ago, but I remember that.
But is it generally the understanding that the city does not require a survey to be done for an addition at this point?
It requires for a new house, and we do require for any C of O or temp C of Os.
Okay, so as far as right now is concerned, the requirement is you're doing an addition, you don't need to have a survey. If you're building a new house, you do need to have a survey. Okay, thank you.
We always recommend getting a survey.
But it was only a requirement because they were splitting the lot. Gotcha.
In this situation, if the lot had not been split, would there have been any reason for anyone to realize that this was an incursion into the rear setback?
As of right now, no.
No.
Okay. Additional questions or comments from board members?
So the variance that you're looking for is just the footage between, is it 29.6, I think, and 35 feet?
Yes.
Correct.
Well, as the board considers the request, I'll remind you of our standard for granting a non-use or dimensional variance under Michigan law. Under MCL 125.3604 sub 7, the legal requirement under Michigan's law is whether practical difficulties exist that would stand in the way of carrying out the strict letter of the ordinance. Ferndale's zoning ordinance governing variances has the same requirement. This is in 18.07 subsection A, a variance can be granted if there are practical difficulties associated with carrying out the ordinance. So in order to grant a non-use dimensional variance, the BZA must find all of the following. Strict compliance will unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose, that the intent and purpose of the ordinance will be observed and substantial justice will be done. Doesn't have to be perfect justice, but substantial justice has to be done. That a lesser variance would not give substantial relief to the owner or be more consistent with substantial justice to the other property owners, and that the general requirements of section 24-426 are met. In other words, that the variance will not impair the supply of light and air or diminish property values, that it will be compatible with adjacent uses, that it won't unreasonably increase congestion, that it won't create a nuisance, and that the plight results from special or unique circumstances, and that it's a hardship not intentionally created by the applicant. Granting a variance requires the affirmative vote of a majority of the board, which is 4 votes. I do want to make sure that the applicant is aware that today we do not have a full 7-member board here that can vote. We have 5 of us here that are full board members that can vote. Because we have with us Planning Commissioner Azar, who's the liaison from the Planning Commission and is not a member of the BZA. Kyle, did you have a different interpretation of Commissioner Azar's role? If she is an alternate, which I know we have had previous planning commission liaisons who have been alternates, then you can vote.
Yeah, through the chair, it was my understanding that Azar is a alternate, and if you look at the ordinance, it does state that alternates can serve as full voting members when they're filling in for someone else.
I was hoping that was the case.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd rather have another voting member here if we can. So we have 6 voting members, but we have 6 out of a potential of 7. So for you as the applicant, it's always your option before a vote is taken if you want, if you'd like to table it and put it over to next month and hope that we can have a slate of 7 voting members here. You're, of course, welcome to do so. We want to give you the most opportunity that you can to have the greatest consideration of your situation.
I think we'll proceed.
Okay. All right, board members, anybody want to discuss some thoughts before we take a formal vote on this, or before someone makes a motion? Or would someone like to put a motion on the table? Sure. I think I did, yeah.
18.5.
I showed 24, 7.
That's probably me. I just have it in my notes as 18.07 subsection A. Thank you, Roger.
Through the chair, and this is just discussion, it's my second meeting, and it's a sort of after-the-fact viewing. I mean, it seems very different if we're looking at this and it's, you know, coming in with nothing built, but it's a different weight for me that it's been through certain review and approval stages, and so I'm even wondering, like, is the waiver the right means to do this? But I assume it is, or it wouldn't be in front of us, but to me, it just seems a little bit off being after the fact, so. I don't know if this has been, happened before, or any special circumstances around it? No?
Yeah, I've been on for 10 years, and I have not seen a situation like this where there has been what appears to be a good faith attempt to construct within the existing ordinance, which is then discovered after the fact that it's actually an incursion. Judy's been on much longer than me. She may have seen it, but yeah, this is a new
No,
one for
it's
me.
very unusual. And I think you're right. I agree with you that it's after the fact. And that's where, may I take your notes for a moment?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So if we have to make sure that we do, where's that, your list of things that need to be done? In my mind, as he was reading them, I heard 3 of them in my head. So, yeah. So the last one is definitely on that section 24-426. Is that what you were referencing, Roger? Yeah, okay, gotcha. I just want to make sure. It's not going to impair any of the light or diminish the property values, or won't unreasonably increase congestion. It won't create a nuisance. Plain results of special or unique circumstances and hardship not created by the applicant. Right then and there, it is a hardship not created by the applicant. And I think that's a huge one. And lesser variance, and I don't know there would be a lesser variance, would not give substantial relief to the owner because it's already built. I mean, you can't make it less. My mother came out of my head.
Yeah, you can't just unbuild a little bit of it.
Right, exactly. And then, strict compliance and unreasonable prevent this owner from using the property for permitted uses. It was permitted and cleared, so this is a really odd situation, and there's just so much leaning towards allowing, in my mind, allowing for the variance because of the awkwardness. But we have to be very careful that we do not set a precedence for everybody on the block to start doing the same thing. For everybody in Ferndale to do the same thing. If there are setbacks, there are setbacks. So it would have to be restricted to this property. And that would be, the verbiage would have to be set forth by probably the attorney. It's not something that we can change the,
Well, I think that the board can find that there is a practical difficulty here because of the if anyone was inclined to make a motion in any direction, frankly, it is best to include in the motion some statements as to why the member making the motion feels that these standards have been met or have not been met. That helps to create our record for the Board of Zoning Appeals so that future applicants who are referencing these minutes can better understand why a certain decision was made in this situation as that may not be made in a future situation. So I agree with you in that regard, Judy. I think that any motion, if there's an affirmative motion here, it should state specifically the reasons why the move-on believes that this situation is unique. Which, frankly, as I've said, it does to me. In 10 years, I've not seen this. Judy, how many years have you been on the Board of Zoning Appeals?
somebody's got to check on this, at least 24. So, yeah. It's my part-time job.
You are our institutional knowledge here.
Longest ongoing BZA person, yes. I think the most unique part of this is that it was already built and agreed that everything was great. And then the skip of the beat was having to do with the plans.
I agree with you, Judy, that it looks like the applicant tried in good faith to follow the intent of 5-foot setback, but due to hardship not created by the applicant, that's why we're in this situation. Traffic on the street, they would have used the original plans and parking would have stayed the same. Get a nuisance. Does fit in with the character of the neighborhood. I do agree that it needs to be careful that precedent isn't set that old plans, the contractor got the old plans, originally wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that there's a key factor here, which is that this isn't a situation where an applicant took an old pair of plans and that wasn't approved and slipped it over to a builder here. This is a situation where the builder picked up plans, believing in good faith they were the right plans. I think the city believed in good faith they were giving them the right plans. You know, everything doesn't always work out perfectly.
No,
We would like it to.
and also it sounds like the process was happening during COVID, so normal operations, things are changing. Digital versions instead of hard copies, so.
Yeah, I think those are some good points. Further thoughts?
I agree.
You agree? Okay.
Already said?
Yeah, my main question was cleared of whether, if it's not approved, to unbuild it. And I just think that that would be kind of messed up, so.
Well, that kind of goes to the substantial justice prong, I think. Marzara, thoughts from your end? Further?
No, I concur.
Down on this end of the table.
I would echo all the sentiments that have been said. This is really a bizarre situation, and I truly do feel for you. It's weird. I wasn't expecting this. So it does feel like this fits the bill as you read through everything within what is expected when we grant a variance. It feels like it's just checked every single box.
You, council member? Well, in that case, if anyone's inclined to make a motion? few moments to carefully craft some language for a motion. We do have some language that was included in the packet. My recommendation would be that that language, if someone is inclined to make an affirmative motion, be embellished somewhat to include some of the actual background that we have just discussed here.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the dimensional variance for the applicant of 2129 Romeo, Sidwell number 2526-377025, after a public hearing was held on this date, and a motion accompanied by the following findings. I'm going to say a few things that aren't in order, so I apologize. I believe the whole board is feeling the same way, but because it's already built, we are feeling that the variance has a lot of merit due to the fact that the action proposed will not impair the adequate supply of light and air to adjacent properties, increase danger of fire, unreasonable diminish or impair established property values within the surrounding area, harm the environment, or any other respect impaired in public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city. The action will be comparable with the adjacent uses and of such height, location, size, that would be harmonious to the neighborhoods. The action proposed will not reasonably increase congestion on the streets for vehicular or pedestrian traffic, more hazardous, taking site distance or traffic flow. The action will not create a nuisance, and the plight of the applicant results from special and unique circumstances, particularly to the property and not from the general neighborhood conditions. The alleged hardship has not been created by the applicant or any person having current interest in the property, and that the real basis for us to say yes to the dimensional variance would be for this particular property and not necessarily a blanket change of codes. It would be held to this property because of its unique circumstances and hardships.
Judy, we have a motion on the table from Board Member Palmer. Any discussion of the motion? Any proposed amendments to the motion? Like to second the motion as offered?
I'll second the amendment, or I'll second the motion.
Right, we have support from Board Member Coulson, and let's do a roll call vote on this one.
Coulson,
Yes.
Webb,
Yes.
Azar,
Yes.
Councilmember Mikulski,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
and Chair Williamson.
Yes. The motion carries. Variance is granted. Congratulations to the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is a strange circumstance.
It is.
As
I've
we
been doing
said,
this
we've
30
not
years
seen-
myself, and I've been doing a lot of variance boards, and this is the first that something like this is even close to an item.
I appreciate that there was clearly a good faith attempt here by the applicant and the builder to comply with the zoning ordinance, and that I think
Yeah.
the facts here are clear that there's not an intent here to be out of compliance, and that everyone believed, in fact, that this was in compliance when it was built.
There's always honesty right from the very beginning. Scott and I had multiple conversations and phone calls. And you know, being an architectural firm, we don't do that. So definitely, completely honest, and just like, what are you talking about? When Pete called me and said, we have a problem, I'm like, what are you talking about? When it was already approved multiple times. And
I was blown away when I
Yeah.
got that letter,
So.
actually, because of the lot split.
I have a curiosity. What are you building next door?
Somebody else purchased the lot.
Oh.
What's the gentleman's name? 4M or?
4D.
4D construction.
Okay.
In fact, John was gonna come here tonight. Part of us.
Well, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you taking quick action on this, once you became aware of the fact that there was a building here that was out of compliance.
Yep.
And good luck to you getting it finished.
Thank you
Can't
very
wait
much.
to see it.
Take care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't wait to see the finished product, because when
Scott, thank you for
I
joining us.
drove by, I
Give
was
the
like,
background.
ooh.
All right, this takes us to the next item on the regular agenda, which is a consideration of a sign variance at 140 Vester. When the Board of Zoning Appeals sits as a sign appeals board, the BZA may modify or reverse decisions of the building inspector with 4 concurring votes. Acting as a sign board of appeals, the BZA can either approve the application as presented, approve a modified version of the application, or reject the application altogether. If the BZA approves the application as presented, the board must find that all criteria for the variance are met. If the BZA rejects the application, the applicant must be provided with a written explanation of the reasons for the rejection. So if any board members vote in favor of rejecting this next variance request, please state your reasons for your vote. The standards for granting a variance from sign regulations are whether a practical difficulty exists on the site that limits visibility of the sign, whether a variance is warranted due to the relatively large size of the site, frontage, or building, or whether a variance would significantly improve conformity of an existing sign. In order to grant the variance, BZA must find that the inability to conform with the regulations presents more than a mere inconvenience or inability to attain a supposed higher financial return, that the practical difficulty or unique condition is exceptional and peculiar to the property and results from conditions that do not exist generally throughout the city. Allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done and will not be contrary to the public purpose and general intent of the regulations. That a lesser variance would not allow the applicant to have a reasonable outlet for free speech, and that the variance will not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So the sign variance request before us is a variance request for Syndicate Ferndale LLC. This is a new restaurant opening on Vester on a property that is on the south side of the street, in between Woodward and Bermuda, across from Valentine Vodka and kind of tucked back behind the Magic Bag Theater over here. In fact, I think that's where it is.
Right behind the Elks.
Behind the Elks Lodge, okay,
Right
that's right.
behind the
It's
Elks.
a couple blocks south of the Magic Bag. So, staff, can you give us any further background or detail on this? Anything else to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as you've noted, this is the property, it's the westernmost of that little row of buildings between Bermuda and Woodward on the south side of Vester. This was a vacant, I believe, a glass shop for quite a number of years. One of my first ever planning commission meetings here was when this went through to convert it to a restaurant. So it's been a bit unsightly, I would say, over the years. Through the process of converting it to a restaurant, there's been a large rehabilitation of the site. There's been a significant amount of landscaping that's been installed. I know there's been a lot of work to address the concrete problems, which usually goes hand in hand with drainage issues. So these are all, I think, very large improvements to the property. So I know it's a very exciting project. What we're here for is for the sign. So all of our signs, we have different types. We have pole signs, we have ground signs, we have projecting signs. This is a projecting sign, so it's mounted on top of the building and it sticks out. You'll see all types of these over, throughout town. In terms of the height and the face of the sign, it does meet the requirements there. The only issue that's before you tonight is the, projection itself. So right now, our ordinance does limit projections to go to 24 inches or 2 feet. The applicant proposes a projection that goes to 36 inches or 3 feet. So that is a variance request of 12 inches. That's all I have. I know the applicant has provided a PowerPoint. We do have the other drawings. So Chair, if you are okay, I would like to turn it over to the applicant.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kyle. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dana Taucher, and I own Syndicate Ferndale at 140 Vester in the downtown business district. We are located directly behind the Elks Club and kitty corner to Bell's Lounge, just east of Woodward and north of 9 Mile, the old Ferndale glass shop. I'm here today to request a sign variance of 12 inches for my new up-and-coming restaurant, Syndicate Ferndale, that showcases a seasonal menu, multi-sensory craft cocktail program, a lounge to host pop-up events, and one of the largest patio accommodations to come into downtown Ferndale. We source many of our products locally and continue to partner with several small businesses in the area to display the wonderful community and entrepreneurs that we have right in our very own backyard. I am requesting this variance in hopes of you understanding the practical difficulties I am currently facing. I've been in front of the Planning Commission and City Councils multiple times over the past 3.5 years. From my first proposal in probably 2018, maybe 2019, with major setbacks due to the parking in lieu ordinance, which took about 6 months to dismiss, only to be followed by COVID. I apologize. When I first proposed my idea to the board, I had intentions of turning my exterior lot into parking spaces, which totaled to about 17 spots. During that meeting, the board recommended that we take away the parking and beautify the lot, resurface it, and develop a new outdoor patio on Vester Street. My eyes lit up, and although I wanted to accommodate the city with parking, I loved the idea of a large-scale patio and potential walk path to link Vester and 9 Mile. The vision started to unfold, and I could see the potential in the proposal. Even though this change of action was a much larger investment than previously proposed, I decided to follow the city's recommendation to be able to move forward with my build-out and prevent further planning commission obstructions. After the meeting, I then went back to the drawing board and came back to the city with a new site plan, which was then approved. Due to the requirements of the city to prevent motorists from using the previous parking entrance, we were required to make specific placement of the trees, which now obstruct the front of our building, which is shown in here. The previous signage at 140 Vester was considerably larger than the current requirements and out of date, yet grandfathered in, I was required by the city to remove the existing signage. As I went around town and got ideas of signage from other local businesses, the issue of a 24-inch max projection was not evident, as there were several businesses with much larger signage than I was proposing. If you take a cruise down Woodward and 9 Mile, there are several signs that have projections over 24 inches. I'm sorry, I'm going to wait to go through my PowerPoint. Over 24 inches, including Como's, Dino's Lounge, Magic Bag, Library Bookstore, Sagon Spa, Downtown Ferndale Bike Shop, Rosie's, and 215, which is vital for the visual representation of the business from the street to the height of where the sign must be placed. When purchasing my signage, I took all things into consideration. I knew I was tucked behind Elks Club and would be eliminated as a visual presence to Woodward in most cases for automobile traffic. I also took into consideration that with the proposal of the new landscaping and trees, those would then be obstructing the vision of the front of my building. As I began to hear the plans of the bike lane that is now being placed off of Woodward, I was excited to know that more foot and bike traffic would be passing by Vester Street. Although we are only about 135 feet away from Woodward, the proposed landscaping and the angle at which the Elks Club lies allows us limited visibility to our unique placement in the city. I was also made aware that Motor City Pawnbrokers at 1461 East 8 Mile had a similar situation of a unique building placement, legal, non-conforming, but not detrimental, and was approved a variance. Following that, I proceeded to do measurements that would allow my sign to be seen from Woodward, still through the trees, but not obstructing the vision of any other business signage on Vester. The ordinance states that our signage is required to project only 24 inches max, which is 2 feet by 2 feet. I am requesting a 12-inch variance for a 3 foot by 3 foot or 36-inch max projection, so we can be visible from Vester Street off Woodward and attract more paying customers to Vester Street and our businesses. I would like to mention I put thousands of dollars into this location and made it what it is today. I brought in before and after pictures to express the amount of time, money, hard work, and dedication we have to this project. It is something we're very proud of and want to share with the entire community. The signage was purchased for just over $3,000, and with how many hurdles we have overcome, we are at a loss on the project entirely. We simply do not have the funds to go back and redesign a smaller projecting sign to help promote the business. The signage was intentional and well thought out to accommodate ours and the needs of existing businesses around us. I thank you for your time and would hope that you would consider my 12-inch variance request in efforts to promote our new establishment, which is located on the next up-and-coming area for Ferndale, Vester Avenue. Thank you. And I wanted to show, I do have the previous plans of the existing parking that was going to go into the lot with no landscaping around, and the now existing plans which show where the trees lie and cover the front of the building. I show in the left-hand corner the existing driveway that we had to place the trees in front of to make sure that motorists do not enter onto the property, which they still do. So I'm still working to get something there that makes sure that that is shown. It's not any longer an existing driveway.
Let me interrupt you for just a
Sure.
minute. I just want to clarify this point. So the trees were not pre-existing trees, but you've added these trees in at the city's request to help beautify this parcel, while at the same time creating a little bit more visual difficulty for someone to look down the street and actually see the front of your business.
Correct.
Fair statement?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I also show the bike lane view. It's kind of hard, I'm sure, to see up there. You can see the building from the bike lane, but it is obstructed by the trees. This is the signage that we're proposing. Rulers at the 24-inch, and we're requesting the 12-inch variance.
Is that the placement of it also?
It would go up on the top of the front of the building.
Okay.
Just some other local signage that I had seen that I did not think that this would be an issue. That was the previous building, and the existing building, and the lot. And some interior before and after, just to give you a little preview. And that's all I have.
Good-looking project. I think that's a real benefit to have that added green space in that alleyway there, which is, spend any time driving back behind Como's, like I do, to pick up pizza almost every week. There's a lot of people walking through that alleyway.
Yes.
I would not be surprised if we end up, well, I guess we can't close it off to cars because there's that parking lot off of it, but if there wasn't for that parking lot, it would actually be a good candidate for that, frankly.
Through the chair, the signs that you referenced of, let's say, the library, bookstore, the 215, Como's, what was the other one?
Rosie's.
Rosie's, yeah. 3 out of 4 of those have been in existence for most of my lifetime. So because they were already there, they're not really comparable. But I looked at on Vester, the Ferndale collision sign is much larger, looks newer, and I know that there was a pre-existing sign there, so they probably just freshened up that. But it's visible all the way down the street from Woodward. Right.
That's, since I've been on the board, that Rosie sign has gone up. That's got to be the same size.
Exactly.
They didn't come in front of
Right.
us.
Now, is it, I guess, through the chair and to the city, is the downtown district and Vester Street different when it comes to signage?
No, in terms of the sign code, I mean, a projection sign is a projection sign anywhere. It doesn't matter what the zoning district is.
Okay, we've had other sign issues, so we know about it and stuff, but I just thought maybe there was a work of it, that's all.
The Ferndale collision sign you're talking about,
Yeah.
that was my same response as most of those. Rosie's is the only one.
Newer.
All the other ones are.
Well, library bookstore, it might not have been library bookstore, but it's been there since I was a child. And the 215 also. Exactly. Well, before it was Maria's.
Before we get too far into discussion, we do also have this noticed up for a public hearing. So while I don't see a horde of public members here, I'm still going to open the floor to any members of the public who might have anything to say on this issue. We're opening this at 7:56 p.m. Now's your chance, public. Seeing nobody, we're also going to close the public hearing at 7:56 p.m. And now, board members, if you'd like to continue with.
Through the chair, a question, were there any comments or emails or letters, anything come through outside of this meeting for public comment?
No, I did not hear anything about this item.
Thank you. Also, through the chair, this has been an exciting project since you brought it in, so we did review it, and there were a lot of great, fresh ideas to make it an interesting spot to bring people in, and I think you really did work with the city on the parking and the feel outside of the building, because, you know, obviously the before pictures wouldn't attract much. So it's something we've been looking forward to and wondering what phase it's in. A question to Kyle. In the packet, there's a drawing that has a view of this, where it's currently painted, Ferndale City glass on the side. Is there signage allowed on both sides, since it's sort of on a corner? Is the only signage to be permitted on the face of the building?
Generally, you do get some kind of signage per face. So I believe that they are permitted something on the side. But I think there's something noted that an interest in joining the mural program. Is that correct? Can you speak to that?
Yep. Yeah, so I've been told that I am able to put a signage of 40 square feet on that side of the building. We were hoping to be a part of the mural program. I had submitted earlier this year, hope to submit in the future, and eventually become a part of that. As the first mural is being placed directly across from us, we think that alleyway is really going to turn into a nice home base for the mural project.
Thank you. So the drawing that's in our packet, right now it says syndicate in block letters. If you don't, or if it takes a while to get into the mural plan, or that is longer, would you be putting the signage for your space on that side of the building?
So actually, this is a coming soon sign that you see that would be removed prior to opening.
Okay, thank you. It's a little hard to see.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Azari, in case there are other people who are
No,
not as
no.
familiar with the proposed development for Bester, can you fill the board members in very briefly on the kind of discussions and proposal for the parking lot over next to Valentine, so people have a better understanding of what that streetscape may look like?
It's been a while. I think, so I'm going to do broad strokes, and Kyle, if you remember better, please jump in. It was more a concern about, and discussion about parking there and pulling through. So it's something that people are very commonly doing now, not knowing that property or portions of it belong to business. And so working out between the parking and making a usable space between the parking and the building itself. And I think you had intent to have seats out there and maybe a separate bar. So they have both an inside and an outside functions planned. So it wasn't just, you know, in the front door. It was, you know, go in and you know, experience the area. So.
Is there still a proposal to develop the property across the street into a larger, like, mixed-use building? Is that still moving forward? Right. Oh, they have their approvals? Okay. So that would that significantly increase the kind of like visual clutter looking along that Bester street line?
It'll be more stuff. Trees and things like that. I don't know if it'll block.
Okay, so maybe more distraction, but not so much a direct impingement on the sight line. Thank you, Roger.
Through the chair, did you submit a sign application with the city?
I was told to do the variance request first.
So when you decided to go with the 36-inch sign, what was your decision-making with those 12 inches?
So I'm within the realm for the signage itself. It's just the projection. It was done with a company that thought we were using this, you know, doing due diligence to the space and the new landscaping that was put in.
So they didn't take a look at the zoning ordinance?
I think that they thought they were within the realm of the signage itself and maybe not the projection itself. And then when we got the sign, it has, you know, these little anchor poles that have to attach to the building, and that created some of that variance difference.
Through the chair, can I ask
Sure.
about the trees?
Please.
So the trees that you had planted, what kind of trees are they, and do you know how tall they're going to get?
They are maple trees that got planted. I do not know how tall they are going to get, but I do know that they are going to be much more lush than they are now.
They're not Japanese maples, they're full-blown maples?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I think it's big.
Through the chair,
Sorry?
if I may, on that point, we have requirements for a lot of street planting in the right-of-way as part of a lot of our site reviews. So we do require streetscaping with trees. So I don't find this is different from something we require in our site plan reviews anyways.
Through the chair, the mural that you hope to put on the side of the building, is it saying Syndicate Restaurant? That's what we have provided?
No, those were plans from a long time ago. We are no longer doing that mural. I'm more so trying to be a part of the Ferndale mural project, which is hosted through the city.
Okay.
Yeah, some of you board members may recall, in fact, I know Board Member Colson, you were there, and Judy, when we spoke with the gentleman that was asking for a sign variance for the Honda dealership down on Woodward. That was something that we explored in conversation, whether he could do a mural on the side of that building that would incorporate something about Honda, but we realized that that would mean that the entire size of the mural would have to be included in the calculation of whether he was meeting the size requirements for the sign. So they really couldn't do a mural that said Syndicate on the side of it, not without taking away some of their ability to use other space. Any additional questions or comments from board members?
Yes, through the chair. Has the city considered the idea, or maybe even the applicant, considered the idea of instead of placing it on the front of the building, placing it on the roof? Because then it could be set back.
So I was actually required, so if you look at the previous building, the existing signage was above the building like that, and I was required to remove that. I forget what the reason being was, but I know that it was required to be
Are you
removed.
saying those metal things up there was a sign?
Yep, it's holding a sign that projects.
There was a,
Sorry.
what's the picture back? You can see it.
I think he's gonna get a bigger, better one
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, there you go.
It was like a white projecting blade sign coming
That
But
said
it's-
Ferndale Glass?
out. It was just whitewashed, I think at one
Ah.
time.
Bob didn't do anything to the building. No, I didn't even like walking in there. It smelled like cigarettes, like nothing.
It's much nicer now.
But I know it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a big-
Okay. Now I
big
see it.
sign.
Okay, gotcha.
So a couple
Oh,
things.
but the one that you're proposing is much smaller than that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So a couple things. Roof signs are not allowed. This was legal non-conforming. And then the code requirement is if your business ceases for 6 months and you've abandoned it, you have to remove it. There's case law around that. But generally speaking, this is not measurable to the practical difficulty. But as a staff member and citizen, I think removal of this and the installation of the new one is substantially improving.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because this was not a great sign. They could have argued they didn't intend to abandon it. We could have gotten into it back and forth, and they may have been allowed, if it push came to shove, to reuse this one, which would not have probably been visually appealing for staff.
Wasn't gonna do that.
Oh. And I think that sign was that yucky when I was a kid, too.
So Kyle, what's the, for a sign like this, it's like a projecting sign. You're only measuring one side of the sign to determine whether it fits within the size requirement, correct? What's the total, this is 3 by 3, if we put a square around it, so we'd be looking at 9 square feet for this? And if I recall correctly, the applicant could have signage of up to 40 square feet on the front of the building, is that right?
space. And what was your second question?
So if it wasn't a projecting sign, like a blade sign like this, and it was just a sign across the face of the building, the applicant could have up to, is it 40 square feet of space covered by the sign?
You have different signs, so. Rectangular blade, wall sign
Right.
shall not exceed 10% of the wall space, calculated area of windows and doors, or 40 square feet, whichever is smaller.
Okay.
So I would assume that 10% would be bigger on that side.
So for a lot of people, for wall signs, you know, you look at the face of the building, like if you look at the brick building next door, you know, if you're subtracting all the windows and everything, you're really eating up your space. That's why they have the 40 feet, you know, cap for the side of this building, just because it's a long blank wall.
Right,
Same thing that happened on, the pawn shop.
right, yeah.
With the windows and stuff, we had to calculate all that, yeah.
Pawn shop was
Yeah.
also in a situation
Viaduct was in the
where
way.
awkward to, go onto a drive because you had that, people going down underneath that viaduct.
So, point being is that she wants it not to be on the building. She wants it to be coming out from the building.
Correct, yes.
So that's only allowed 24 inches to protrude from the building?
That's correct, yes.
Is there any precedence that has, well, there are, but they were pre-existing
We
signs?
just saw
Yeah.
Rosie's.
Yeah,
That's a precedent.
yeah.
I mean, in terms of legal non-conforming signage, I mean, it's a lot of signs. I mean, every single pole sign you see out there, which is a lot, is legal non-conforming.
Right.
So
Like
all these
Anna's
signs, you know, you can,
uniforms?
what's that?
Like Anna's uniforms?
I,
Well, I'm just saying, that's been there.
so, you know, all these signs, they can be updated, they can be maintained, they can, and sometimes change and be updated, but they cannot be made bigger or increased or anything like that.
So the side of your building that faces Woodward, or the alley, I should say, is an area that a sign would help you to be seen from Woodward.
I also, though, if you look back at the proposed landscaping in the front, I have trees that also would block all of that from Woodward as well.
So where were you, that's what I'm trying to understand. Are the trees gonna hide the sign anyway?
Yes. With the projection of the front, you see past, you can see it from, if you were standing at Hambo, you would be able to then see the sign. So for the bike lane and other visitors that are walking on the streets.
And the sign is going to be lit from the interior, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, you've got that Elks Club. So if you're driving north on Woodward, part of the concern here, driving north on Woodward, even with a lit sign sticking out.
Well,
But then it comes to anybody who's off,
right,
is gonna want
Yeah, that's a good point.
we don't have many side streets with businesses, so it's a little bit different. Vester is a unique circumstance.
But we would hope that over time that would develop. Not everywhere because it's residential, but where, especially on Vester, as it does get built up, as you go down, this is the first building off, it's literally the first building off the alleyway.
Right.
The next one will then want to have
Another,
45 inches out,
Yeah.
and another one will 55 inches out.
Through the chair, on that point, a couple of things come to mind. In our commercial districts, we were trying to get buildings at zero lot line, so that they're really closer to, and this is set back a distance. But it's kind of a big distance in a way that you get to engage people at the doorstep, and with the landscaping, the site planning, they've really made the scene around it, activated the front and the side. So, I don't know if, in that point, you know, how big is the sign that actually works? My second view is, where am I going with this? Pedestrian. So we're in a CBD, we're not looking to draw a lot of cars and traffic and circulation. We're really hoping that people find a place to stop, park, not, you know, at the curb. and then walk through. So what we're really trying to promote is not something that's attracting traffic that's driving by. And I believe if they've turned on that street, they've experienced downtown and they're probably already have a destination or looking for parking, maybe not looking for a space, especially since each space doesn't have its own parking. So like if you're going there, you know they're not like a major store that has a parking lot associated with it. So for me, I'm disconnecting the signage and the vehicle searching versus, you know, your experience with being downtown already. So I'm questioning how big a sign or what type of sign, projecting or surface, is appropriate.
Yeah, because if you're relying on people driving down Woodward to turn back and look over to their right, that is almost a danger.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess you think about it, that will be the third business on Vester, active business, I should say. More. It's a destination, is the way I want to put it. Just like Voyager. Nobody knows where Voyager is. But it's on Vester. Just wait.
Yeah, so my thoughts are more along pedestrian scale and experience in the neighborhood versus attracting vehicles looking for a place to go.
I agree.
The city asked you to come to us before or after you made the sign?
Way before, years before.
Years before you made it?
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't understand the question.
The question is, did the city advise you to come to us before or after you made the sign?
After I made the sign.
Is that because you had not submitted a sign?
I had submitted a sign application and then told me and advised me to come do a variance request because the projection, although the diameter is per proportion, the projection was not. And I wasn't going to just put it up without mentioning that, so I wanted to come in here and do it the right way. I made the sign I submitted my application after I had purchased the sign.
Chair, our IT is messaging me that there's some kind of issue with the broadcast. He's asking for like 30 seconds just to get things fixed up.
Sure, we can take a brief recess.
We're good to go, thank you.
All right, we're back on the record.
Through the chair. So I'm looking at the sign itself, and it's got feet on it, and I realize it goes the other way, but are you saying that those feet are what make the sign too large for?
The projection, yes. If that,
Part of it, I think.
yeah.
I know it is, but.
Yeah, if that sign didn't have that and it could just attach the building, it's within the variance, yes.
Okay, because I don't see 12 inches in those legs. That's why I was trying to figure it out. But it must be the frame itself, too. Okay, gotcha. Okay. That doesn't seem to be 12 inches.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about a huge sign here.
No, we're not.
In fact, I think this is, I've never seen a request for a variance that is
I mean,
been anywhere near this.
when you're talking 2 feet by 2 feet, I mean, the sign up there is gonna be so small, and
Right.
even if it's lit up, I don't know if you'd be even able to see it from any angle at the edge of Vester.
Are you lighting
Because
it,
of where,
are you
because
lighting it from above
It's lit within.
Within?
Yes.
Gotcha, okay. So the yellow is going to be lit and not the black?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
Staff, I also went in the shop. Very nice signs.
And situations where it is a building on a street that we're trying to create an atmosphere, but, yeah.
So if this sign were projecting out 24 inches, it could be like 8 feet high, and it would still fit within the ordinance, correct?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Now I'm understanding. 24 by 8 feet high, yeah.
Right, it just seems like the applicant could have come in with a compliant sign, I think, that would have been much bigger than this sign.
I would also like to state that I was told that this was going to be revised in the next 6 months and that I could wait 6 months and come back, but obviously, we just received our C of O last week. We're looking to open as soon as possible.
With a different sign, maybe, until we can get our signage.
Yes.
You know, there's gonna be a lot of rewrite on this. We're learning as we go along that everything changes, and
Yep.
you gotta go with the changes.
Absolutely.
Allowed. Affecting sign.
Right, because I
Put a
recall we
mark.
gave a variance to the Magic Bag to put a much larger sign than this one on the Magic Bag, because it was a historic building.
Let's do the other one.
If the board ends up being inclined to approve a variance here, could we attach conditions to that variance? I'm thinking more along the lines of the applicant, and this is, of course, I don't know what the board's feelings are on a variance in general, but just because we've had such an issue in the city with temporary signs and people putting temporary signs up and then never taking them down, and then just renewing the temporary signs forever, which is terrible. One thing that would make me look more favorably on this would be if the applicant agreed not to put any banners or temporary signs up. If they received a variance and were allowed to put this sign up.
Yeah, like a coming soon. That
Yeah,
type of thing.
I just think of some
grand
buildings up
opening.
and down Hilton that have had temporary signs and banners for 5+ years at this point, it seems. Never seem to come down.
Have a right to do something else. Not sure legally.
Right, but you can put a new, they're not, and you can also repeatedly apply for a new one.
You can,
There's
yeah.
no limit on the number of times you can re-up on your temporary sign.
Yeah. So I don't know. What I do think is that the applicant don't believe she would cheapen it by doing temporary.
Don't want to.
I don't believe she would agree to that. She would be putting banners up.
So what would be a condition otherwise? A temporary sign that you were thinking?
I would gladly take all my temporary signs down.
That was the only thing that,
I'm just
me,
wondering
and
what other conditions.
again, this is a, you know,
No.
this is a personal preference I have that I think goes towards beautification of the city as a whole, but we all have our own opinions on this. Some people may love these temporary signs and banners.
I think that's also, the only issue I have with that is that that's a short-term condition, and the sign.
One would like to think it would be a short-term condition.
You're right. I agree with you. It's hard to enforce the temporary sign ordinance. But again, I just go back to, there's a planned unit development across the street. and there's other buildings down Vester that could potentially turn into different type of uses that would require signage of a projecting sign, and it just becomes an arms race of who has the longest projection sign down.
Right, because you can't see it beyond the first one, the second one, yeah.
And then the issue of it really being that you can't see it off Woodward or around the Elks Club. I mean, the building was located where it was located back when the project started. And also, it's a destination area that we've talked about. Traffic or bike lanes. So that really isn't a hardship at that point. That if it's you're gonna be there, not trying to find it off of Woodward.
I would like to state, though, that that was supposed to be a parking lot, and those trees wouldn't have been there, giving such a, I guess, coverage of the building if that wasn't required by planning.
But that's still, but there's no guarantee that 12 inches is gonna overcome the issue with the trees. And it's not that you can't see it off of Woodward, it's at an angle, and you're going down the road, trying not to go into the bike lane, and you're supposed to look over and identify that sign that's coming through. It's a difficult hardship.
I understand what you're saying, Board Member Colson. I do want to remind everyone that our standard for this specific decision is whether it's a practical difficulty and not a hardship.
Okay, well then,
And I think it was timely that our city attorney gave us a reminder of this. At times, the board tends to start to kind of juxtapose these two standards, but they are two different standards, and a hardship is a higher standard than a practical difficulty. That said, it's, everyone has to be convinced when they're voting on practical difficulty here. But it doesn't have to rise quite to the level of a hardship. Keep that in mind. And I also want to tell the applicant, too, the same thing I told our last applicant. We have not a complete board here. We have 6 out of 7 potential voting members here. So you are welcome to, at any time, if you'd like to table your request and bring your request back at a point when there are going to be 7 voting members, you're welcome to do that. You get, with our deliberation up here, you get a preview as to what people are thinking as of right now at this point in time. You can move forward and wait to see if someone puts a motion on the table. If you decide to table your request, then you come back before the board with a fuller set of people on here, and then you don't have to pay again to come in front of the board. So just keep that in mind as an option.
Thank you. I'd still like to proceed.
Okay. So let me see. So the standards again that we're looking at here for a sign, whether there's practical difficulty that limits visibility, whether the variance is warranted due to the relatively large size of the site frontage or building, it's not a huge building in this case, or whether a variance would significantly improve conformity of an existing sign, which we don't really have at this point with that rooftop sign having been taken. So really what we're looking at here is whether a practical difficulty exists on the site that limits visibility of the sign, considering for this variance. So do we have further thoughts on that issue of practical difficulty? Councilmember Mikulski, anything from you?
I mean, if I'm understanding practical difficulty, and please help me because I'm new to this. If I'm understanding practical difficulty, then we are looking for things like that compliance with the strict letter of the restrictions governing lot width will unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity with such restrictions burdensome. The intent and purpose of the ordinance will be observed and substantial justice will be done. I feel like I'm reading the wrong thing.
What I'm saying is, I understand where you're coming from, but it's not for a sign, and neither is what Dan said us.
Practical difficulty is still the same, it's practical difficulty as opposed to still a legal standard.
And what,
Through the chair, let's talk about what that means. So help me understand, what does practical difficulty mean in the context of this sign?
Well, unfortunately, that's kind of for us to decide.
Okay,
With practical difficulty being,
that's fine.
I will say this, if you look at the strict letter of what's written both in our statutes in the state of Michigan and in our zoning ordinance, and you say it absolutely has to comply completely with what the strict letter is of this, there's never a variance that's going to be granted.
Okay,
Because you can always come up with a way, for example, that someone can use a piece of property in some permitted fashion. But the intent is, if there was an intent to completely prevent people from ever deviating, wouldn't have language in our ordinance that allowed for variances. So it's up to us as a body to determine, do we think how much is this deviating from our ordinance? And based on where this property is and what the characteristics are of this property, and based on what's being proposed, do we think that deviation is unreasonable or unrealistic?
so through the chair, what we know thus far is that we requested that you put in trees that can definitely obscure the location. We know that there are existing signs in the same area that are of the same projection, whatever the term is. So we know that exists, and it feels odd that we would look at this with a different lens of scrutiny when we have signs that already exist. And again, I understand that the letter of the law is what it is, but that does feel unnecessarily burdensome and unfair to the applicant. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Part of the discussion and decision, I think, is whether substantial justice is being done. And on the one hand, we have some older signs that at the time they were put into place, they were not non-conforming. Maybe there wasn't even any regulation at all when those signs were put into place. On the other hand, we do also have some signs in the city that are comparable that were put into place at a time when they were certainly subject to this ordinance, yet variances somehow were not required for those signs. And how that happened, I can't answer. But I do know that some of these signs that we've seen examples of, since Judy and I certainly were on the zoning board, and we did not, no one asked us if they could have a variance for those signs.
Whether they submitted permits. Driving by, you're not going to notice whether it's 2 or 2.5.
Right. Maybe someone approved it without really a full understanding of, how, and things don't always happen perfectly.
Through the chair, can I ask another question?
Sure.
So looking at the picture of the sign with the little legs, would you even be able to put up that sign in its current form if you removed those legs?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Something to attach.
6 inches or something.
Yeah, those little brass brackets, yeah. But there would be no way to, there's also, I know in the submission for the sign permit, there has to be a particular type of anchoring of the sign when it is a projecting sign, and that does follow code to what it needs to be.
It's not just the legs that are anchoring it, there's something else?
Well, it's the legs, but it has this little bracket at the end that provides the support that it needs for wind and all of those other variants, or all of those other obstacles that it may encounter.
The applicant, can you tell us what your practical difficulties are?
My practical difficulty is that you cannot see my signage from Woodward. My practical difficulties are that I had put in landscaping that prevented that vision. that was required by the city. I had an existing signage that was grandfathered in to be able to meet those requirements, but then was required to remove it. I've put countless dollars into this project, and I know that that might not be of concern, but the sign was very expensive and is high quality and met all the other standards of what the sign permits require. The practical difficulty is also that I'm kind of tucked behind the Elks Club. I have a unique position in the city, and it's hard to see my building, although it is visible from both sides of Woodward on the south and north side. But visual representation of my business is no longer able to be seen due to the requirements that I've had for my site plan.
I'm sorry, please, finish.
Because they removed the roof sign, they would have not removed the roof sign.
Right. Right, if they had fought the city on removing the roof sign because the roof sign was grandfathered in, they could have been potentially successful in that fight, and then we would be stuck with this building with that giant metal structure on the top of it, with a much, much larger projecting sign coming off of that metal structure.
Yeah, I think that on the traveling public safety, if not more, bicycles and
Absolutely.
pedestrians.
Oh, sure, I'm thinking of people that are
That's right.
parking over on the other side of Woodward. Around,
Well, that's why I thought the roof would give her more visibility.
which it absolutely would, if that's something.
It was allowed.
And with the bike lane going in and everything that's going into Woodward, that was part of, what I wanted to be visible to the public.
Through the chair, and I'd just like to kind of clarify or go by memory. When we reviewed the site plan, there was definitely discussion about the roof sign, and it was definitely an intent to have that removed as part of the site plan review. So it was consciously looked at, it was discussed, the benefits, pros and cons, and it was agreed to remove it with no real statement of wanting it there by the applicant. So I really think the argument that it could have been worse is not carried through, because they had that opportunity to, present it and discuss and have that approval. So to me, that's kind of water under the bridge. And other thoughts are that they have two faces to this building. A lot of spaces, retail or whatever, don't have that opportunity to have a full wall or even use the outside of it. So collectively, they've got two sides to use outside of this building, plus two sides to put some signage on and have that much more visibility. So again, they've got other opportunities than this one sign.
There's alternatives, yeah. for
Thank you
sure.
for the background, Commissioner.
Through the chair, my thoughts are that there are plenty of successful businesses that you can, and the success of your business is not going to depend on one sign. Word of mouth in this city is huge. For example, we brought up Voyager. You can't see that. Even when you're driving by, yeah, it's super successful. Or One-Eyed Betty's. You're driving by, they've been around for 15 years or whatever. So I don't really see a practical difficulty based on where you chose to open a restaurant.
Even the businesses in the dot don't have visible, it's just people walking there and know that those businesses are there. I mean, it's great.
And Valentine is super successful. They do have a mural.
Yeah.
They do, which is much larger than what I'm able to place on my building, because it was probably not required and/or grandfathered in.
And it's mostly a picture of a woman and Valentine really small.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just saying, if we don't approve the sign, that's not gonna make or break your business.
And I
I'm
don't,
sure you're gonna do
I don't,
really well.
yeah, and
It's
I don't think so.
beautiful.
I just, we put so much money into this building, we'd like to be able to promote it in the way that we hope to. We think that we need the sign in the front of the building. We think that that's the most practical place to put it, especially with the developments that are going to happen on Vester Street. There's going to be the new apartment complex across the building, which is going to have shopping underneath. And actually, the entrance to their building, I believe, is in the alleyway. I just want to bring light to Vester, really. That's all. I like the street. I love Rufino. I've talked with Rufino Valentine many times, and we're just trying to bring people to that side of the city. We're going to actually propose valet parking in the 9 spots that I have. So attracting customers to there with the limited parking that we do have in the city, and that's been going on for a long time now. We're providing parking. We're providing parking, and we'd like people to be able to see our business, to know that once you come down, if you come and are more attracted to that alley, you can find more parking down there. I think it's vital that we have a sign on the front of the building, and it's unfortunate that it is such a small measurement that is making it so we can't place it there.
Well, you can place a sign there, you just can't place that side projecting out, but that sign lit up facing west would be awesome. I know it's only one-sided at that point, but you can also then put something above your doorway.
Are you saying attach it to the side of the building?
Yeah.
Why can I attach it to the side of the building but not the front?
Because you won't be protruding, it'll be flat.
Oh, I think she means like cut the legs
Oh,
off
like
and-
attached, I see, like
Right,
attached to the
right,
building. I
right.
see.
Which if it's lit up, it'll shine everywhere, so it's just a thought.
I appreciate it, thank you.
In my opinion, it's gonna be a very hard for us to give a variance for this under the circumstances. I wish it was different. And I wish that our ordinances weren't so strict. But we have to abide by them. Now, a year and a half from now, a different story.
Well, you've heard,
You've got so much hope, I know.
you've heard thoughts from multiple different board members. I will say that my thoughts on this is that I do see that, I do view this as being comparable to our decision on 8 Mile for the pawn shop, the Motor City Pawnbrokers, or that there is a level of visual clutter here in part that is being added in conjunction with the city and for the purposes of improving the streetscape here. It can be distracting, and I think that once the new project is built across the street, that mass is going to naturally draw down. More distracting. No, that's okay. I think we all know
They
what
had
it looks
difficulty
like.
the way the building was angled.
Right, they had
As well
difficulty
as the
with,
viaduct being there
and the driveway.
and the driveway, right.
So that's one of the reasons why I see it as being comparable, because again, you have a weird drive to come in with limited parking. But, I'm one board member of 6 board members here today. I think that even though the applicant wasn't necessarily interested in keeping the rooftop sign, I do appreciate the fact that there wasn't a fight to keep that rooftop sign. So for me, I do think that I could see a practical difficulty existing here, but that said, to get a variance, the applicant needs 4 affirmative votes. So again, to the applicant, I'm going to give you the option. We can move forward and let people put a motion on the table and vote. You can table this and have 7 people present if you want to do a vote with a full slate. It's up to you. Right now, we have no motions on the table either way, but you've heard comments from a number of different board members.
Through the chair, what practical difficulty do you see? Visual?
I think This is a building that is tucked back. It's a smaller building. It's attached to a set of buildings. It's tucked back from, like, further back from the lot line than what we are looking for in this central business district. If this building, right, we're looking, in all of our recent revisions that we've done through the master plan, we've looked to push everything right up to the lot line. If this building were pushed up to the lot line, I don't know that the applicant would feel a need to have a 36-inch as opposed to a 24-inch sign at that point, but the streetscape would be much less engaging and much less pedestrian friendly. So I think that the applicant, to me, the way that Woodward angles coming up through the streets here, there's a little pocket back here behind the Elks Club that not really very obvious or visible. Now, on the one hand, are people going to know where they're going if they go there? Probably so, but that's also true for Motor City pawnbrokers. People are going to know where they're going. That, to me, didn't mean that they weren't in a slightly worse position. I feel the same way about this business. I think because of the siting of this building, they're in a slightly worse position, and in an area where there's frankly a lot of competition amongst other restaurants and bars. There isn't a lot of parking that's immediately close by. The existing parking that is immediately close by, I think, is going to be gone if 140 Vester ends up being developed. So you could have a lot of people parking over in the dock, parking over on the other side of Woodward, who they're not going to have quite as much of an opportunity to capture that foot traffic if they don't have that visibility from across the street. And I think having a slightly bigger sign that's lit up provides that visibility.
Some cities are doing the directional signs, whether it be for the post office or what, you know, that type of thing. But they're also incorporating, you know, directionals for Vester, I guess it would be a thing. Or it would be a post that would have,
Right.
you know, it right there. I think,
Casinos in Grand Rapids.
yeah, so I would think that, you know, syndication, restaurant, Valentine vodka, whatever it may be, you know, that might be an option for the city to do, or the businesses, especially during the construction.
I do think, Board Member Palmer, I do think your idea of temporarily mounting the sign on the side of the building, especially if we're looking at a potential revision in the next 6 months or so, and there's a chance that these sign size requirements might change, that's a good idea.
I mean, it's still used, you know what I mean, and it's lit,
It's still
which I think is pretty cool, yeah.
and used with the option potentially of pushing it out to project if the ordinance is altered to the extent that that's something that is a capability, which, and we're not talking about a large variance request, we're talking about 12 inches. I've never seen a sign variance request this small in my 10 years on the board.
How is the 12 inches going to overcome the fact?
You can see it past the first tree, and that kind of gives you the, I mean, you're able to see it at 36 inches. You're able to see it from the street at 2 feet from Woodward at 130 feet away. You cannot see that sign. At a little bit larger, you can see that sign.
Well, what
Let's
if-
project past the
Did you
tree.
look into maybe doing like a 6 inch? 6 inches provide you what you need?
Yes, I guess I wanted to make sure that I was within, I didn't want to go back and it be only 6 inches and it be 12. When I took the measuring tape up to the sign, not taking into consideration that the poles were adding on to that length, I just looked at that as a 12-inch difference.
And what steps did you take to follow the intent of the ordinance?
The sign is the size of the ordinance, or the required ordinance.
You didn't get prior approval from the city.
I did not know. I had talked with Emily Loomis about the sign. I did not know that the attachments would be part of the projection length, or the mounting equipment would be part of the projection. I thought that the sign had to be, within code. I did not know that the projection of those poles was going to move then into the 12 inches that it is now.
And what's the practical difficulty when you're coming
From the left or from the right? From the right, it would be the collision shop. The collision shop's signs actually are placed in front of their building, out onto near the sidewalk. So if you were coming south, going north on Paxton, you would not be able to see my sign at all because of the Ferndale collision sign.
And then to the city, do you guys expect more sign variance requests? Sounds like.
This is the first one I've seen. Not a very.
Not a lot. Pawnbrokers was the first also.
And Pawnbrokers was on Woodward, and the practical
No, 8
difficulty-
Mile.
8 Mile, sorry. It was on 8 Mile itself. The issue was that there was the railroad right next to it.
The angle of the building.
The angle of the building, the angle when you're driving westbound, you had to turn as well as go under a viaduct. And if you missed it, you had to go all the way back around and come back. And then, but this time the business is on Vester, but the practical difficulty is coming from Woodward.
Kind of.
Completely.
Not really, not if you're talking pedestrian traffic.
But I don't see how a pedestrian would have issue seeing a 24-inch sign over a 36-inch sign.
Because there's trees that I was made
You're
to
going to
put
be
in
walking
front.
down Vester. So the angle's going to change. You stood at an angle and took that photo, and yeah, at that angle you can't see it. But you're moving towards Vester Street from Woodward. The angle of the building would change.
I do actually show that. So right here in the bike lane view, if you're headed north, the trees completely cover it. And if you're on the south side, you would be able to see it. The tree still does cover over here, which is kind of like the visual representation of this picture here, more so from this angle, and then the visual representation from the other angle of the bike lane here. The signage, as is, shows through the trees and is able to be seen. Again, 24 inches when you're talking 2 feet. When it's 10, 15 feet up in the air, it's this big.
There would be countless businesses on 9 Mile who could say the same thing. Going down Woodward, you can't see it from there, where you're walking down.
Well, and many of those are grandfathered in and have much larger signs that are ginormous compared to mine, so.
No, most of those, the newer businesses have to be flat on the building, they could not protrude. So, yeah, like.
Or like Whiskey Co., Traverse City Whiskey Co., that's more than 2 feet out, for sure, 3 or 4.
It was pre-existing sign.
The Traverse City Whiskey Co.?
I'm almost positive.
Wasn't that a brand new build?
No,
Well, it was part of Como's, but there was no signage there for it.
I thought there might have been.
Traverse City,
Maybe
yeah.
there was.
I may be wrong,
don't
I
know.
may be wrong.
I could be wrong too, I don't know. I don't
Yeah, some of
visually
those
look
are-
at it.
Are new signs that have been put into existing frames,
But I'm just saying along 9 Mile, any of the newer businesses along there like Rocket or Modern Baby or Painting with a Twist, they all had to be flat to the building. They could not protrude.
Through the chair, I just wanted to interject a little bit, because if you think about that corridor, it's a little bit different. On 9 Mile, I expect everything to be pedestrian friendly. I'm walking, I expect to be able to walk into businesses. If I'm coming from Paxton on that road, I've got a collision shop, I've got Canine Turbo Training, I've got Folio. None of those are walk-in businesses, and I feel like visually, I know we've been talking about Woodward a bit, but visually, if I'm coming from Paxton and I look down that road and I don't see a sign that juts out, I don't know that there's something that I can go to as a pedestrian, as somebody walking around, they want to stop in at a restaurant and maybe grab a drink. So it feels a little odd to try to compare this to 9 Mile, For instance, because 9 Mile, I believe there's an expectation. Since this is a little bit off of that main drag, it feels different. It's just got a different mix.
It's a developing pocket as
It
opposed
is.
to being a long-term, well-developed restaurant area of the city.
The only issue with that would be that you're taking out the parking from across the street, so it's not going to be particular traffic going up and down Vester anymore. It's going to be mostly pedestrian and biking.
Right, because there's, yeah.
It would be a destination to that strip.
Are they still leaving the parking on Vester?
It's going to be,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
On the north side, there's like maybe 8, 10 spots.
Might be changing slightly, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, from Valentine Vodka, actually, Embrew, out in front of Embrew, towards Woodward, to right in front of that parking lot, current parking lot, there's like about 8 or 10 spots.
And through the chair, for the parking discussion, there are things in motion in various places, and I think there will still be cars that will come on Vester at various times. It may not be the thoroughfare of vehicles that we see currently with Valentine, but people still may be using the alley to get to the Breckenridge lot, as well as the Como's lot, as well as looking for a place to park on the street because there are destinations there.
Through the chair, just kind of going back to, is the sign big enough and is there difficulty? It's this is not in the middle of the block, and really did a fabulous job in energizing the property that you have next to it. So in my mind, that really draws interest before you even see the sign that there's something happening there. I believe you have a couple of entrances even on that side. So it's not like you are not able to touch that wall or anything on that side of the building. So what's shifting the weight for me about, is this sign the most important thing about drawing people there? Or is this building and development, the way it's developed with the site, really activated, which fabulous job. I think it's going to do a huge amount of work to say there's something here, there's something happening. You don't have to see the sign and go in the door to experience that. So that carries a lot of weight for me, that you did invest so much in making that an opportunity to have your business outside, bring people in and showcase it. So smart planning, good move, and you know, I think that's going to do so much more than a single sign would do.
well, commissioners, any further comments or questions? Is anyone prepared to make a motion on this direction?
I think at this time, I'm gonna take some time to think on it. Maybe revisit this at a later date and hope to present more of a practical difficulty if need be.
All right, the applicant has determined to table this, so we will remove this from voting consideration. I want to thank you for your time. This has been a illuminating discussion, I think. I do think that your business is going to not only thrive, I think it's going to blow up. I think regardless of the size of the sign, the
Yeah.
style of sign that you have,
I'm excited.
I think your
I really
business is
am.
going to blow up.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your clear willingness to work with the city to make this as appealing of a location and a streetscape as possible in this area. And maybe we'll see you again, maybe we won't, but you have the opportunity to come back before us with this or some other version of this if you want to seek a new sign variance, and I believe you should be able to do that without having to pay a fee again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
All right, moving off of regular agenda to item 6, administrative items. Kyle, any administrative items for us?
Yes, we do. We have 2 items. So the first is, we've mentioned a couple times tonight, I'm just doing a brief recap about our zoning ordinance update, or rewrite, that is. Right now, we are in the midst of going through our public engagement period, so we have identified 4 topics that we're going to be setting some engagement sessions. They're mostly consisting of open houses that are going to be hosted by our consultant, McKenna. So these are housing diversity, downtown design, racial equity, and sustainability. The first 2 events are very close. The first is the housing diversity, so that'll be this Saturday, the 22nd, at Urban Rest Brewery from 12 o'clock to 3:30. We would invite you and anyone from the public to stop by. That's going to be focused on items like expanding and diversifying housing throughout the city, maybe looking at items like duplexes, triplexes, other multifamily. Of course, accessory dwelling units, that's really one of the big ones too. So again, that's this Saturday. Then next Thursday, the 27th, assuming I have that right, we will be doing downtown design. So that's in 2 parts. We have a walking tour, which will start here at Council Chambers at 12:30. We're going to walk downtown, identify a few key sites that we would like to review with the whoever goes on the tour. We're going to come back and have a bit of a discussion. Then the second part of that is at 6 to 9, we'll be at Schiffer Park as part of Ferndale Street Sound, so we'll have a little more of an informal open house soliciting info. The next 2 items are still in the planning stages yet, so we will have more information when those are more concrete. Yeah, in terms of racial equity, we've been working with Ferndale schools. So we're partnering with the school board and the parent-teacher. In fact, we talked with them last night. Should I do the tentative date? Yeah. So it's still tentative, but it's mostly there. It's going to be August 15th at the Ferndale High School. Yes, we are looking into daycare and pizza, so we're trying to get parents' involvement, which often means bringing the kids. And, to help contextualize the issue at hand, we are going to have a professor from Wayne State come and make a presentation.
What, the 27th you said was from 12 to something?
Yeah, so the tour is during the day. That's from 12:30 to 2:30. And then there is a nighttime component as part of Ferndale Street Sounds, which is from 6 to 9. The other item I have is related to RRC. So that's redevelopment ready communities as part of the MEDC's program. The City of Ferndale is engaged with MEDC's RRC program. This statewide program requires cities to follow a number of best practices to offer a transparent, predictable, and efficient development experience. Best practice 4.6 requires several boards and commissions to have a training strategy. Staff has identified that 2 hours per year is sufficient for the Board of Zoning Appeals due to the irregularity of the meeting schedules. So as we move through the second half of 2023, if there were any trainings, webinars, classes, meetings, workshops, or conferences that were about planning, zoning, or development that you attended or plan to attend, please keep track of them. At the end of the year, staff will reach out via email and request that all board members report their trainings. Staff will then compile the information in the BZA annual report. Board members are also encouraged to share knowledge and information gained from these training events with the rest of the board. Information sharing can be accomplished through a short verbal report during the board member items portion of the agenda, or a short written report in the form of an agenda item by a discussion with the rest of the board. Thank you all. I'd like to note that Christine Ross, our planner, wrote that for me, but she could not be here tonight to deliver it herself. We do have a copy of the 2023 City of Ferndale Board of Zoning Appeals Training Plan. I'll email that to you all probably tomorrow.
Great.
So we have to take 2 hours of Con Ed, basically, continuing education.
That is RSC best practices, yes. That's all I have. Thank you.
I would strongly urge any members who are able to go to any of the sessions that have to do with the zoning ordinance rewrite to attend. As Board of Zoning Appeals members, it's our job to interpret the ordinance and essentially tell the city and everyone else what it means. So we're going to be best equipped to do that if we have a seat at the table and are all paying close attention to the deliberations and the decisions that are being made that go into the actual rewrite. When we have a better understanding of the reasoning, why language is being taken out, put in, revised, changed, we're better able to do our job at telling the community at large what the ordinance means and how it should be applied. So to the extent we can do it, I urge you to do it. I'm unfortunately out of the country this weekend. I would really love to go to the one that's happening at Urban Rest for housing. I think that's going to be fascinating, but I'm going to do my best to be to some of the other ones. Just, I can't be here that Saturday. Any board items? Anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Great. In that case, we'll move on to our last and not least item, adjournment. We'll adjourn at 9:03 p.m.